Hello, my name's John.
My name's Dan.
And we are part of Powderkeg Brewery. We're a microbrewery out in the Devon countryside, making modern English beers for the Devon market.
So Powderkeg was started by 3 years ago. John was working as a traditional brewer, and decided he wanted to stop making the boring traditional best bitters and do something a bit more interesting. Inspired by the craft beers coming out of America, and then taking world beer styles like pilsners and kolsch's and all this interesting stuff that people were doing with beer, and give it a bit of Englishness, get it into our way of drinking, and take it out to the people of Devon and across the country.
So it's early in the morning here. It's fairly chilly. Brewing is a day-long process, but we'll try and run you through as much as we can. We'll start with the mash, where we'll mix the malted barley with some hot water, make a big porridgey type consistency, and that will be the basis of the beer. So this is the mash. Here we've mashed about 500 kilos of grain, about 1,000 litres of water to make a porridge, where the starch in the grain is going to start breaking down into sugars. And it's those sugars that the yeast will ferment in the final beer and turn into alcohol. So I'm just going to take the temperature of it now. We like to mash at 65 degrees or as close to as we can. That's going to get us the best conversion rate, the best efficiency, and ultimately result in better beer. So we'll use up to 6 different types of grain in one of these mashes. There's a basic pale malt, which is the basis of most beers. Then there's things of various toastiness and colour, which will bring sweetness or roasted flavour to a beer. And there's things like wheat we might add, and wheat will give the beer a good head at the end. And we might also use black grains if we wanted to brew a stout or a porter, which is just a heavily roasted grain. This one's a pale ale, so it'll be mostly pale malt, a little bit of caramel malt for a bit of sweetness, and a bit of wheat. So this brew is our Speakeasy. It's an American pale ale. This one's got a nice rich malt base. And then later on in the process, we'll add an awful lot of hops, all from the west coast of the US, and that will bring those big, fruity, complex hop aromas on top. So yeah, this is just checking the temperature of the mash, which is a little low today, but it's a little bit chilly outside. So the whole brewing process here at Powderkeg starts up at the top there, which is in a giant hopper full of 500 kilos of grain. You'll see us mash that in with hot water in the mash tun, and it will sit in there for about an hour while all the starch is turned into sugars for the yeast to ferment. Once it's sat in there, we'll start running it off into this vessel here, which is called the copper. And that is basically a giant kettle, and it's in there that we'll sterilise the beer by boiling it. We will start adding in hops there as well, and so we'll add hops throughout the boil. The first ones will bring bitterness to the beer to balance that sweetness of the malt, and then later in the boil we'll start getting aroma and flavour from the hops. There's up to, there's maybe 60, 70, 100 type of hops in the world these days. We like to use as many of them as we can. Some of them will bring spice, some of them will bring fruit flavours, some of them bring floral notes, and that's the brewer's skill is in there, mixing those hops together with their different types of grain, and that's how we build a beer from the base up. So once the beer is finished boiling in the copper here, we need to get that cooled down as quickly as we possibly can. So that's going to go from boiling to fermentation temperature, which is about 20 degrees or thereabouts. We've got to get that down from boiling in about 45 minutes. So we'll put that through the heat exchanger around the back of the vessel there, and it will come back out the front here and over to here, which is, these are our fermenting vessels. So these are uni tanks. So in here We'll put in the cooled wort, we'll pitch our yeast into there. Again, there's a whole variety of yeasts, and depending on what you want from the beer, how clean you want it, or whether you want the yeast bringing in flavour of its own, we'll pitch the yeast in there, and then that is where it will ferment. Fermentation temperature can be anything from about 11 degrees up to about 22, 23. The colder it is, the cleaner the beer. So when we're brewing our pilsner, we'll ferment it very cold, and the yeast will just do the very basic work. They'll just be turning the sugar into alcohol, not much more, and we'll end up with that nice, clean, crisp finish. The pilsner will then, once it's finished fermenting, we will let it sit there for about another 6 weeks, conditioning and lagering, which is the German term just for storing the beer. And throughout all that time, the yeast will just be cleaning up the beer, and it's just going to be lovely, pale, crisp, and refreshing at the end. So once the beer's been fermented and conditioned, which takes anything up to 7 weeks here at Powderkeg, we will filter it through the plate filter here and the membrane filter. That's going to give us a nice bright finish, which we like here. And then we are one of Devon's very few keggers of beer at this level. We like a keg, it keeps the beer in perfect condition. It means we can serve it in all sorts of other places. And generally it's just a superior form of packaging in our opinion. So during the fermentation process, we seal our vessels, and that allows the beer to be naturally carbonated. It's a process called spunding. That means that we've got this nice natural level of carbonation in the beer, and we'll carry that all the way through the brew, right through to the kegging stage. Beer is quite a simple thing at heart. There's 4 main ingredients, water being the main one, malt and hops and yeast, and it's just through those combinations, there's hundreds of varieties of each, and through blending those together in different ways we can make a whole world of beers. These are some of the ingredients here. This is a crushed pale malt, so this is the basis of most beers. So this is barley grain malted, which means it's just germinated, it's just ready for what the natural process where the barley grain would start converting the starch inside into sugars, but we've stopped it at that point, and we'll just continue that at the brewery. So we'll convert that in the mash tun to create a nice sugary liquid. That's very tasty, it's very biscuity, it's a little bit grassy, and obviously quite malty. There's plenty of ways that they can treat malt. So this is a Cara malt. This has been lightly toasted, and also it was slightly caramelised as well, so that's going to bring a bit of colour to the malt, and it's also going to bring a touch of sweetness to the beer at the end. These are hops. Hops are the flower of Humulus lupus. These grow on big vines, growing up to sort of 20-30 feet tall. The good bit of the hop here is inside, so this yellow powder, the lupulin, this is where all those resins and oils and things are that we like to extract during brewing. And we can use these, if we boil them, they'll turn a beer bitter. If we add them later in the brew, we're going to extract all those gentle aromatics. That's going to give us lovely floral notes, lovely fruity notes. And the more we can pack in, the better. So we'll actually hop 5 different stages during the brew here at Powderkeg, 3 or 4 times during the kettle, and then we will throw in a load more hops in a process called dry hopping inside the fermenter, where it will sit on those for 2 weeks, and that will just get those really fresh hop notes into the beer. So we package in keg, cask and bottle here at Powderkeg. These are our bottles you can see here. These are our 3 main brands. Cut Loose, our Pilsner, Speakeasy, which is our American Pale Ale, and 6 and 7s, which is our brand new one. That's a really big beer. It's 6 malt, 7 hops, 5%. A real kind of autumnal warmer, which are just coming out now. So you'll see it on the shelves very soon. You'll find these all in local shops. You'll find us in pubs, restaurants, hotels around Devon. Yeah, look out for the beer. If you haven't tried it yet, please do, and hopefully it will blow your mind.
Check out our social media pages. We're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram under the name Powderkeg